Hello everyone, I'm Drew Goldfarb. Welcome to this trade deadline edition of Betting for the Cycle, where this week we're giving you 4 picks from the National League and 4 picks from the American League for baseball's July 31st trade deadline, telling you who we think will be traded and who won't be traded. Twice the picks, and that means there are 2 separate cycles that are up for grabs this week. Here is how this works. I'm going to name the 4 players from each league who are currently rumored to be on the trade block. Our experts and I will each give you our picks for whether or not they'll be dealt and rank them based on how confident we are in that selection. The least confident pick will be our single, most confident pick, of course, the home run, with the double and the triple in between. And we're going to be doing that for both the National League and the American League, giving us a chance at betting for 2 cycles. Our individual stats, of course, tracked all season long. You'll see those pop up on the screen as well. And as always, I'm joined by Taylor Smith and Jim Baviglia. All 3 of us went 3 for 4 last week in our picks, so not too shabby there. Let's start with the first half of our deadline doubleheader. We're going to begin with the American League. For our first player on the block, we're taking a look at Toronto pitcher Marcus Stroman. Bovada has him listed at minus 500 odds to be traded, plus 350 odds to stick around. Taylor, what do you say?
I tend to side with the odds. I think Stroman will be traded. I'm making it my home run for the American League. He's not in the final year of his deal. He has another arbitration year left, but his value is never going to be higher to Toronto than it is right now with a year and a half left on his deal. Toronto's going nowhere. They have no reason to keep him, really. They can keep him for another off season, but his value is only going to go down from here. So I think he's getting dealt, and it's my home run.
Jim.
Yeah, I think he's going to get dealt as well. I'm going to make it my double. I'm not that I'm not confident about him, just a little bit more confident about some of the other ones. A lot of teams need pitching. It's always the way at this time of the year that teams need starting pitching. So there's going to be a demand for it, and I think he's more likely to go than some of the other ones that are on the block. Yeah, Toronto's nowhere near the playoff race, obviously, so thinking about the future. So I think they trade him. Like I said, I'm going to make it my double.
I'll make it unanimous. Stroman is going to be traded in 2019. The fact that he's arbitration eligible kind of pushes back that deadline for the Blue Jays to do something with him. Even so, I've got to think he'll be dealt by the deadline. I'm making it my double as well, just like Jim. Blue Jays were pretty active at last year's trade deadline, giving away or trading away J.A. Happ and Roberto Osuna. 2017, they moved Francisco Liriano and actually discussed moving Stroman even then. By the way, the Astros and Blue Jays have been trade partners with each other in the final week of July for each of the last 3 years. Houston is a rumored landing spot for Stroman, at least one of the rumored spots. Stroman will be moved, maybe to the Astros. It's going to be my double. And for the record, Stroman going to Houston is not part of the pick. Just a side note, just so we're clear, I still get a double if he's traded anywhere else by the trade deadline. Number 2, let's stick with pitching and shift to Cleveland. Indians battling not just for the wild card, which they currently hold, but for the AL Central as well. Even so, Trevor Bauer's name keeps popping up in the trade rumors, with CBS ranking him 6th on their list of the 50 best players who could be dealt at the deadline. Jim, is Bauer leaving Cleveland by the end of the month?
Well, I have a feeling I might be going out on a limb on this one. Obviously, they're in the playoff mix. It would seem counterintuitive to trade a guy as good as he is. I mean, one of the best starting pitchers over the past several years. But I think it's a case of not so much playing for the future, but they have a lot of starting pitching in Cleveland. Danny Salazar is coming back. They're hoping that Kluber and Carrasco come back. They have Clevenger. They have Bieber. They have Plesac, who's pitched well. I think they're dealing from a position of strength here, and I think they could beef up their offenses, which is what they really need. So I think they might trade him, even though they are in the playoff mix. I'm not that confident about it, but I'm going to go with trade him, and I'm going to make it my single.
I've got to go with no, they're not going to trade him here. I'm going to make it my triple. Bauer is a free agent, but arbitration eligible, so there's no true rush to move him. Cleveland is flying up the standings right now, may overtake Minnesota by July 31st if all things keep progressing like they have been the last week or two. They already have an edge on teams chasing them for the wild card. Bauer's been a big part of that. I don't know that he draws any more or less in return by moving him before August compared to trading him in November if they can't re-sign him. Bauer's staying with the Tribe. I'm going to make it my triple because when has a Cleveland team ever disappointed their fans in the past? Give me 27 examples from the last 5 years, and then maybe I'd consider changing my mind. But I'm saying he's going to stick around. I'm going to make it my triple. Taylor, break the tie. We're 1-1. What say you?
Yeah, this one's tough. I could see it going both ways just because Cleveland is in the playoff race, and they're only 2 years from a World Series appearance. They went to Game 7, or 3 years, I guess. But, this team's still really talented, but they've just kind of not really hit their stride the way people thought they might. I think he's going to get traded. Jim made a good point about their depth in the rotation. They have had injury stuff, but I think, he's kind of an unlikable guy. So I wonder how much Cleveland fans would really be that upset if he were traded, even if they are good. I'm making it my single. I'm not super confident. But there's enough smoke to this with the Padres and the Phillies specifically being reportedly involved where I think he will get traded, but it's just a single for me.
Next deadline pick, we switch to the hitters. Detroit Tigers currently one of the two worst teams in baseball, along with the Baltimore Orioles. Nick Castellanos will be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, but he's also still not having the best of time or the best of seasons. He's not having the best of times in Detroit either. So will Detroit deal him before the deadline? I say yes. This is going to be my home run pick. Castellanos was speaking to the media about just how much he hates playing 81 games a year at Tiger Stadium because of that outfield wall dimensions that he was talking about. Clearly, he wants out. Detroit has no reason to keep him. He's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. It seems obvious that Detroit won't be re-signing him, so they'll deal him somewhere to a team that'll get a guy with skills and a chip on his shoulder, and he'll spend the final 2 months of the season trying to prove to potential free agency suitors that his decreased 2019 numbers were because of the ballpark that he was playing in. It's my home run. I'm saying he's gone. Taylor, what about you?
It's my triple that he will be traded. He's in the final year of his deal, like you said. He's been pretty vocal about his displeasure with Detroit. It'd be funny if he randomly got traded to the Giants, who have an even worse home hitting environment. But I think he's gone. There's no reason for them to keep him. That is a triple.
Jim, round us out. You making it unanimous?
Yeah, unless they keep him for spite, that would be the only thing at this point that would keep him around. But I mean, here's a guy. I think he has 32 doubles and barely double figures home runs. So that seems to scream that the ballpark is affecting the power a little bit. I think I don't know how much they're going to get for him because his defense is not that great. So teams aren't going to be paying too much through the teeth for him. Teams need pitching more than hitting. But I mean, he's just basically making a cry for help to get out of there. So I think he's gone, and I'm going to make it my home run.
Last one to complete the cycle in the AL, we're going with Hunter Pence. Texas Rangers, a 500 team right now, fourth place in the challenging AL West. Taylor, will we see Pence patrolling the outfield or playing a DH role for another team by the deadline?
I think we will. The Rangers have kind of fallen off over the last couple of weeks. They look like sellers. They were talking about selling Mike Minor even before they fell out of the race a little bit. The Rangers didn't have any expectations for Hunter Pence. They signed him basically as a flyer in spring training. Obviously, he's exceeded expectations quite a bit, made an all-star team this year. So, anything they can get for him is gravy at this point, considering they signed him on as a total one-off just in case he winds up hitting. So I think he's going to get traded. I think he's a valuable right-handed bat for somebody. I'm going to make it my double.
Jim.
Yeah, I think he's going to get traded. I mean, where does he not fit? Because he's not a guy who's going to need playing time. He could come off the bench. He could hit against lefties. I mean, there's so much he could do, especially with how he's kind of upped his value again this year after struggling for the past few seasons. It's been a great story, and I'm sure there's some sentiment there for Texas to keep him around. But, I mean, this is a classic no-brainer because you might get a young guy who's going to help you in the future, whereas Pence, is he 36, 37 years old at the tail end of his career. So I think he's going to get traded pretty clearly. I'm going to make it my triple.
I'm going to say yes, and it's my single for the American League picks, but basically just because I kind of ran out of high-confidence spots for this. Pence is only making $2 million this year. He'll be a free agent on the verge of his 37th birthday this offseason. There's no reason for Texas to hang on to him when they're not catching Houston in the West. They're very unlikely to snag a wild card spot given how competitive those positions are right now. You've got Tampa, you've got Boston, you've got Cleveland, you've got the Angels, the A's, all ahead of them right now as we're sitting here and recording this. The Rangers have nothing to keep him. They may gain at least a little something if they trade him. It's also probably a nice gesture to let a guy who's getting up there in age to play and make a playoff run. He's going to be moved. It's my single pick for the AL. Would have ranked it higher, but like I said, I think the American League trade deadline picture just seems a little bit clearer, so I kind of ran out of room on this one, so I'm making it my single. So that is it for the American League. Game 2 of the doubleheader. Let's just turn right around. Let's get right started on it. On to the National League we go. For starters, pun intended, let's look at Madison Bumgarner. Outstanding in high-pressure situations, especially late in the year. Bumgarner's Giants hanging around in the wildcard picture thanks to an outstanding string of games in the last few weeks. However, he'll be an unrestricted free agent this offseason, and he's certainly going to command a much higher salary than the $12 million that he's making this season. Taylor, will San Francisco deal Bumgarner and his expiring contract before the trade deadline?
Yes. We've been hearing about this for a long time. The GM is Farhan Zaidi. They got him from the Dodgers. In spite of their winning ways lately, I think he still knows this is a team that's not going to win anything early this season. So I would be surprised if they didn't trade a few of these guys. Mad Bum, most notably, left-handed starting pitching. That's one of the more valuable things you can have on the trade market, even if it is a rental. I think he's definitely a goner, so that's my home run.
Jim?
Yeah, I think this is an indication that we struggle with these National League because I'm going the opposite direction. I'm gonna make it only my single, but I think he's gonna stay. I just think the timing of it right now, with the way that they've surged, I think they won like 9 out of 10, and they're only 2 games out of the wild card spot. You've got a guy who means so much to that city. I mean, part of 3 world championships, practically carried them on their back to a world championship. I think maybe he sticks around and maybe he gives them a hometown discount in the off season. And I just think the timing of it, where this 2 weeks ago I would have gone with Taylor, but now that they're so close, I think he stays. I'm not that confident, but I'm going to make it my single that Bumgarner stays around.
I think he's going to be traded. I'm going to make it my triple. Bumgarner has a no-trade clause, but he'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Unlike with Cleveland and Trevor Bauer, this is not a situation where a continued surge can get the Giants a division title. At best, they're a wildcard team and facing Washington, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Milwaukee, someone like that in single-game elimination to open up the postseason. It's not worth losing Bumgarner for absolutely nothing this winter to have that one-game play-in game. They'll deal him. He'll go to a contender. That'll be that. Bumgarner's gone. It's my triple. They're already losing their manager this offseason. It's probably time for the Giants to hit a little bit of a rebuild, and Bumgarner going somewhere else would be a good start of that if they're going to get a number of prospects in return. Number 2, this one really, really hurts me to talk about. Noah Syndergaard. New York Mets, a big disappointment. 14 games back of Atlanta in the NL East, 7 games out of a wild card spot in the National League. Will Thor take his hammer out of Queens this year at the deadline, Jim?
Oof, and again, this is my home run pick, and I don't feel confident about it at all. I think he's going to stay. I think they're more likely to trade Zach Wheeler. I mean, this is still a young guy. You still feel like he hasn't hit his peak, and the Mets have a lot of young talent still around. They have Alonso and they have McNeil. I think they're not that far, even though that division is tough. So to trade him, they're kind of mortgaging that possible present. And I just believe that Thor, he's a New York guy and that he's been around for a while. I think he stays. Again, I'm not confident about it, and yet it's my home run pick.
Well, call this me being hopeful as a Mets fan. I'm saying no. I'm going to make it my double because I, as a Mets fan, just know to never be confident in a decision involving the Mets. Syndergaard has had a down year statistically, though it's mostly the team that's playing behind him and around him. He's arbitration eligible this year. He's still under team control. The Mets are much more likely to deal away Zach Wheeler, like Jim said. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent after this year. I really don't want to imagine a 2020 Mets team without either Wheeler or Syndergaard, especially after they traded for a mid-30s second baseman and they traded away some younger pieces to get that just a few months ago. But hey, that would be a very Mets thing to do. They could always deal Syndergaard, though, at the winter meetings. I don't think if they're going to try to move him that there's any rush to it. I'm going to go no because I'm going to cry either way if it's yes. I'm going to make it my double. So, Taylor, we are currently both thinking that Syndergaard stays in Queens, playing at Citi Field. What about you? What do you think?
I think he's staying too. Jim took the words out of my mouth. He said Zach Wheeler is probably the most likely starter of the Mets, with Jason Vargas possibly to be traded. I'd be surprised if Syndergaard followed him. I think they'd have to be kind of blown away with the package in order to even consider it. He still has 2 years left of arbitration after this season. Like you said, they could do it this winter. I don't think they're in a rush to do it now. I do think he could find his ceiling elsewhere. I'm not sure if he's done much improving during his time with the Mets. A change of scenery might help, but I think he's staying. I think it's going to be I'm fairly confident in it, which is not confident at all, but it's still my triple.
Next deadline pick, Yasiel Puig signed a one-year deal with Cincinnati last offseason, going to hit free agency yet again this offseason. The NL Central's still up for grabs, but the Reds and Pittsburgh Pirates have each slipped to a point that it's likely that they are beyond contention. So, will the Reds send the resurgent Puig packing? I say yes. It's going to be my home run for the National League. I don't doubt that Puig has enjoyed being in Cincinnati and out of the spotlight. There are plenty of articles online that discuss that. But he's going to be a free agent this offseason, free to sign wherever he wants, whenever that rolls around. In the meantime, the Reds could use getting a few pieces back to rent him to a contender. One of the names CBS connects Puig with is Cleveland. That would seem to make sense both in trade partner and in keeping Puig out of what is considered to be a major media market and the pressure that comes along with playing in somewhere like in LA, as he had previously done. This is my home run pick. I think that he's on the way out of Cincinnati, at least for a few months. Taylor, do you agree with me?
I am going in the complete opposite direction. I think Puig's going to stay. It's my single. This was the hardest one of all to me. He's been good this season. Cincinnati's done him well. I just wonder about potential contenders wanting to add him to their locker room. I think that's a potentially combustible situation. He had that reputation with the Dodgers for a reason. I love him. He's one of my favorite players. I would love to have him on, the Astros, for example. But I don't know. It's just tough for me to see him getting traded, even though he is a free agent. I could see, I don't know. I'm like talking myself out of this, but I'm just going to keep it. Puig stays. It'll be my single.
Okay, so because Taylor did not talk himself out of it, Jim, you get to cast a tie-breaking vote here. Will Yasiel Puig be traded at the deadline?
Well, Drew, this is a tough one for me. Like you with Syndergaard, I'm a Reds fan, and I have absolutely loved Yasiel Puig this year. I mean, he's been better, and not just his on-the-field play. I mean, that community loves him. He has really thrived there. He's on a pace for career high and everything. That said, I mean, this Reds team is not going to make the playoffs. There's just too many teams they have to jump. And, I mean, I could foresee something where they trade him and try to re-sign him in the offseason because you guys have mentioned he is perfect in Cincinnati. The Reds made a trade a few years back similar to this where they got rid of Dan Straley and they got Luis Castillo. So I think that's the kind of thing they're going to be looking for here. As much as I hate to say it, I do think they trade him. They have a lot of outfield depth, too. That's another thing I think that's working in the favor of trading him. So I think he goes, and I'm going to make it my double.
Last one to complete the cycle in the NL. One that's probably going to pain Taylor a bit thanks to his long-term playoff pick. San Diego Padres are still in contention for the wild card in the NL, but they've got a backlog of outfielders. Hunter Renfroe is leading the Padres in home runs this season, yet his name has been connected to some trade rumors since the All-Star break. Taylor, will the Padres deal their leader in dingers?
Ken Rosenthal wrote last month that the Padres are open to it. But Renfroe still has 4 years of control left after this season. The clock's not really ticking on San Diego to trade him. He's been good. He hasn't necessarily developed into a well-rounded hitter, but obviously teams are always looking for dingers. I think he stays, though. The Padres, they're not going to win this year, but I don't think they really are in a rush to trade away a decent part like that. I don't know if his value is at his highest right now, but my inkling is that he stays. I think they may wait until the offseason, so that's my double.
Jim?
Yeah, I go in the opposite direction. I just think the Padres have so many similar pieces right now that Renfroe becomes expendable. I mean, I was looking at this. I couldn't believe it, but Will Myers is only a year older than Renfroe. Seems like he's been around forever. So, and he's under a big contract. He's not going anywhere. So right now they have this kind of unstable situation where they have 4 or 5 outfielders trying to fit in 3 spots. And I don't know that Renfroe's value is ever going to be higher. He's right now kind of at the peak of his career. He was kind of a late bloomer. So I think that they're going to get the best they can if they trade him now. So I'm going to go with trade him, and I'm going to make it my triple.
I almost feel bad because I kind of talked Taylor into thinking the Padres had the lineup to possibly sneak into the playoffs this year. I think Renfroe stays, but I'm not confident in this pick really at all as far as the NL picks that I've been doing go, so I'm making it my single. As ESPN's Jeff Passan points out, it's unlikely the Padres could use Renfroe to trade for a foundational starting pitcher, a big-time prospect. He is 27. He does have 4 years of team control left, as was pointed out, and his power numbers are great, so I think he's someone that teams could and should inquire about, but I don't know if he'd be the one that would be worth it for the Padres to deal away. So for that reason, I'm saying he's not going to be traded, and I'm making it my single. And he has only been in the majors for, or at least playing professionally for about 5 years, because he played at Mississippi State, made a run of the College World Series in 2013. So he turned pro immediately after that. Got to cover his run to Omaha in that situation. He's always had this kind of power. So now that it's been translating, I don't know that it might be worth an inquisition for some of the teams, but I don't know that it's going to be worth it for San Diego to accept that kind of package in return. Before we wrap up, checking back in on our World Series picks, I've got Atlanta plus 300 to win the National League, Houston plus 170 to win the American League. Astros are now plus 150, so I got in at the right time. Braves, meanwhile, now plus 370, so I'm just going to take those new odds and I'm just going to run with them. Plus 370 for the Braves. Taylor, you've got the Astros locked in at plus 180, the Dodgers at plus 170. As I mentioned, Houston was at plus 170 a week ago when I picked them up, now plus 150. LA, an absolutely incredible minus 110 favorite to win the NL. Any changes you'd like to make?
No, sir. I'm good where I am now. The Dodgers may be minus 170 at some point soon, so I'm happy to have them at plus 170. Same with Houston. Yeah, I like what I got.
Jim, you locked in the Yankees and the Dodgers. Already went over LA's crazy movement. Yankees were plus 230 when you locked them in. They're now plus 140, so great value on both of your teams there. Any changes you want to make, though?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to change. I feel like a broken record. I keep saying I'm still torn kind of between the Yankees and the Astros. Now it looks like Gary Sanchez might be heading to the DL, but the Yankees can afford to lose that. They have so much power. And I think the struggles of their starting pitching in a kind of backwards way helps them, because I think it only ups the urgency for them to go out and get a starting pitcher. So I don't, I went against trading Bumgarner, so I guess I don't believe that it'll be Bumgarner, but I think they're going to get somebody, whether it's Stroman or somebody like that. And so I think I just like them to edge out Houston still, but real close between those two.
All right, so that'll do it for this week's edition of Betting for the Cycle. Be sure to check back next week where we'll show you the stats of how we did and give you our latest picks. For Jim Baviglia and Taylor Smith, I'm Drew Goldfarb. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the trade deadline madness, and we'll see you next time.